People who enjoy spiritual practices often discover that a once terrific practice has run dry. The good news is that we have many other worthy practices to try next. In this video, we'll look at one from the Jesuits called the Examen. As a teen, I worked at a pizza parlor with horrible morale. Like one night I'm working the register and an angry woman berates me and complains that her order's late. It's only been 15 minutes, but I check on her order and find that we have, in fact, lost it. You can imagine what she said to me next. Each day I felt so worn down, but research tells us that's unavoidable. Someone might tell you they don't care about what other people think of them, but they do. But I love the help I get from the Examen. The Jesuits, whom you may know are a Catholic order founded about 700 years ago that built a good deal of Europe's educational system, are known for their spiritual exercises and their intensive training retreat. And their most famous spiritual practice has had a recent revival of interest. The Examen encourages us each day to ask God to highlight what most brought us life that day. They call this our consolation. And then also what most took life away from us that day, or desolation. Lots of people get the consolation part, but who needs the desolation? Why not stay positive? Until recently, I didn't get this. I lean towards optimism and can easily come up with half a dozen things that superficially I like just fine in a given day, while having a harder time coming up with something in my day that least brought me life. So what's the point exactly? But I've been helped by a small book written by family members Dennis, Matthew, and Sheila Linn called Sleeping with Bread, Holding What Gives You Life. Among their many helpful tips, they suggested I make the Examen a daily ritual, not a casual tossed-off thing, but something sacred, a sacrament. They talk about things like lighting a candle each night as we and our family or our friends share our consolations and desolations. Or a simpler starting point in the spirit can just be to put our hand over our heart as a sacred act, we invite God to speak into our consolation and desolation. Sometimes I've logged my desolation and consolation each day. I've noticed trends which might point to things I then can do, while other times there isn't an obvious fix. But God might have comments on those trends like, hey, there's an opportunity for you in that desolation. What would it be like for you to go into that circumstance the next time with hope and openness to me and open-heartedness to see what happens next, rather than tightly defending yourself against it? Wouldn't that be amazing? Let's go back to my pizza parlor story. How would the Examen help me deal with those frustrations? Without it, my only tools each night were fruitlessly trying to distract myself or talking myself out of how bad I felt. Those didn't work. But it turns out I had a great card to play. I could put my hand over my heart and ask, as a sacred act, what's my desolation on one of those days? Easy, it's that rejection, and it's normal to have desolations. All that criticism or bad treatment gets seen and offered to God, and what do you know? It turns out there's power in just sitting with those desolations, just as there is in sitting with my consolations. Contemplatives pitch this will help me find the kind of integration between my internal spiritual life and my everyday lived experiences that helps me become aligned, helps me realize in a rush that, as Paul argues in Romans 12, God's will for me actually is good, pleasing, and perfect in all of my life's messiness. The Jesuits encourage us that it's not only okay to get in touch with what actually brings us life and takes life from us, as if that's not a frivolous distraction from the real work of doing what our culture tells us God wants us to do, whether we like it or not, but that it might even prove to be a central aspect of a godly and happy life. Of course, like all powerful spiritual experiences, it too might work wonderfully for a season and then run dry. So join me next time to look at another great spiritual practice that you might have missed.